great way to start the day together with a nice big buffet breakfast. And then we gather around for a little talk about what's going to happen that day. There are so many possibilities in this city, it's tough to pick from, but that's why I'm there to help out. The first priority I would suggest for you today is the Museum of American History. It opens at 10 o'clock. All the museums open at 10 o'clock, and they stay open until about 5:30. And the Museum of American History is just a wonderful place. It's the nation's attic, and it doesn't have paintings and sculpture as such. It's not an art museum. It's a museum of stuff. It's got cars and locomotives. It's got clothing. It's got general stores. It's got environments you walk into. It really set the standard for the informative educational museum that also entertains. Something else in that museum is an exhibit on the World War II internment of the Japanese. And it's all about Hawaii. So you've got to go see that too. It's got the headlines from the Star Bulletin, and it has a reconstructed home of a Pearl City family.
It was a time when some of us had to take extraordinary steps when our Constitution did not require it.
It's one of those marvelous experiences for you waiting at that American Museum of American History. So again, that's my number one suggestion to recap. And a close second is the Air and Space Museum if you haven't been in there yet. And that's so close you could perhaps towards the end of the afternoon on the way back to the hotel save at least an hour and a half for Air and Space. You'll see the rockets and the lunar lander and whatnot. The third museum is the Museum of Natural History. Natural history is not just about nature and animals, it's about human animals as well. They have a Hall of Pacific, a Hall of Asia. They've got an exhibit on the emergence of Western civilization. It traces 10,000 years going back to the cavemen, Stone Age, early agriculture, Egypt, Rome, and Greece, up through 500 AD, 10,000 year sweep, all in the Natural History Museum. And just the rotunda, just walking into the main rotunda of the Natural History to see that big bull elephant. It's one of the great museum spaces in the world, even if you just see that opening room. And you know, one technique for dealing with the museum, since we are always on limited time, is just walk through it. And if something really catches your eye, well, stop and read the sign. But otherwise, you can just absorb so much by a simple walk through if you are pressed for time, and particularly like in the natural history. Just in, walk around at your own pace, and then walk out. Don't worry about seeing everything. The Smithsonian, by the way, is the largest museum in the world, largest museum complex. There's no single building that's the largest in the world, but all together, it makes up by far the largest museum in the world. And then I would like to suggest that at 4 o'clock this afternoon we meet back in the lobby and we'll go to Georgetown. We'll take taxis from here to Georgetown, get there about 4:30, which is that golden time of day now. You know, sunset's about 5 p.m. And Georgetown is quaint and charming. There's restaurants and shops that'll be open. And there's the old canal. It dates back to 1830. It's preserved as a National Historic Park. And it's a very easy trip because it's all within a few blocks in Georgetown. So it's not a lot of walking. We've been so lucky with the weather and with just about everything throughout this tour. The colors. DC is peaking this weekend, just about now. Some of the trees still green, of course, but many of them are at their peak at this moment, right along the mall. Along with the many monuments and museums and beautiful buildings in Washington, you'll find some wonderful parks. There's little gardens tucked away, there's the mall itself, and right now we're walking behind the Smithsonian Castle in the Hauptgarten, one of the prettiest little vest pocket parks you can find in any urban setting anywhere. Especially now, the trees are in full bloom, all the colors are turning, so it's a great time to be here in Washington in late October. So when you're up early like us and looking for something to do at 9 o'clock on the mall, this is the only thing happening. The only game in town is the Castle, which has the Visitor Information Center. They've also got a gift shop. You can buy some books and maps and whatnot. It's a nice way to start the day because the main museums of the mall don't open until 10 o'clock. The castle was constructed back in the mid-19th century in this fantastic Victorian, Gothic, and Romanesque style of architecture, and it contains some very informative exhibits inside the castle. It's called the Smithsonian Information Center, and they have a 20-minute video that runs all day long, and there's different kinds of little booklets and brochures that you can pick up there. So now we're properly equipped and oriented, walking past the Hirshhorn Sculpture Museum across the mall into the National Museum of American History, which dedicates its collection to inspiring a broader understanding of our nation and its many peoples. This is not a museum of art, it's an exhibit of objects, of things, covering a wide range from transportation to agriculture to medicine, pharmacology, electricity. We've got education exhibits of all kinds in here. On the first floor, the emphasis is on the history and social impact of science and technology. It's a collection of real things that relate to the real people of the country, not to the rich and famous, but to the daily life of Americans past and present. And can you imagine a museum that's not only free, but allows you to interact with the exhibits and put your hands on for some real learning that's fun as well as educational, good for kids of all ages. There are 16 million objects in the collection of the Museum of American History, including a half-naked statue of our founding president, George Washington, in all his glory. Sculpted in a classical Greek style, the public was embarrassed by the partial nudity, so it was stuffed away in a basement, but now it's on exhibit, along with early relics of the American industrial age. Also, Foucault's pendulum that demonstrated the rotation of the Earth. There's a rather remarkable display of Pueblo culture and the native movement to retain their cultural identity.
The most important thing I'd like to pass on to my children would be the stories, the mythology of the Navajo people and the history, because I think that gives them a base to say, I come from there and I know what my people are like. That gives them a sense of belonging.
The museum is like a living time capsule. It includes, among other things, ceramics, musical instruments, printing and graphic arts, household appliances, textiles, money and metals, gowns of the first ladies, military history, an archive center, firearms, farming implements, the photo center of the Smithsonian, agricultural displays, railroads, electricity. We've even got a dragster here created by Big Daddy Gartlets. This is the first dragster to exceed 270 miles an hour in the quarter-mile run. Nice display of motorcycles, including an early steam-powered motorcycle, old carriages from the days of the Wild West, and there's 40 antique automobiles, including a Duryea from 1893, a 1913 Model T, a 1903 Oldsmobile, and a 1903 Winton touring car. And there's the nation's oldest steam locomotive, the John Bull from 1831. An exhibit about the American Industrial Revolution tells the story of craftspeople, factory workers, and inventors. They have the original dining counter from the first sit-in in Greensboro, a pioneering effort to end racial segregation. Well, these machines and turbines might not be everybody's cup of tea or favorite thing to see in a museum, but it does demonstrate the evolving industry and society and work culture that made American superiority possible. There's a reconstructed ice cream parlor here that has very decent food at a fair price. It's the Palm Court. And even here you're sitting amidst history because it's like a turn-of-the-century ice cream parlor. And along its edge is the Horn and Hardart Automat from 1902 that was relocated here from Philadelphia, the first self-service restaurant. In those days you could put a nickel in the slot and out comes your pumpkin pie. Or you can have a picnic lunch outside anywhere